It was a rainy Thursday night when Emily first saw him. The bar was almost empty, just a few regulars sitting quietly, sipping cheap beer and watching an old football game on the dusty TV hanging above the counter. The walls were dim, the air thick with the smell of spilled alcohol and fried wings. Emily had been wiping down the bar for the 5th time that night, pretending to be busy just so she wouldn't fall asleep standing. Nothing exciting ever happened at O'Malley's on a Thursday, but then he walked in. He didn't look like someone who belonged in a place like that. His suit was wrinkled, but still expensive. His shoes were muddy, but they were real leather. His face looked tired, like he hadn't slept in days, and there was something about his eyes, something far away, something broken. He walked straight to the corner booth, sat down without a word, and stared out the window as if he was waiting for the rain to wash something off his soul. Emily had seen all kinds of people come through the bar. Drunks, lovers, liars, loners. But this man was different. He didn't order a drink. He didn't look at the menu. He just sat there, like he was hiding from the world. Should I go talk to him? She whispered to her coworker Mark. Mark shrugged. He'll order if he wants something. Leave him be. Probably just another guy who lost his job or got dumped, but Emily couldn't help it. Something about the way he held himself, like every breath hurt, pulled her in. She grabbed a glass of water and walked over to him slowly. Hey, she said gently, placing the water on the table. You look like you've had a rough day. The man looked up. His eyes were deep blue, like the ocean before a storm. He didn't smile. Thanks, he said. His voice was hoarse, like he hadn't spoken in a while. Emily nodded and waited, but he didn't say anything more. She stood there for a second, unsure of what to do, then walked back to the bar. But her eyes kept drifting to him every few minutes. He didn't drink the water. He didn't check his phone. He just sat there, lost in some place only he knew. When her shift ended around midnight, he was still there. She walked past his table on her way out and hesitated. Hey, we're closing up soon. Just so you know. He nodded slowly. I'll leave in a minute. She wanted to say more, ask if he was okay, if he needed help, if he had anywhere to go. But she didn't. Instead, she stepped outside into the rain, pulled her coat tighter, and walked to her car, heart heavy and thoughts spinning. For the next few days, Emily couldn't stop thinking about him. Who was he? Why did he look so lost? What was he running from? Then, the following Thursday, he came back, same time, same booth, same silence. This time, she brought him a whiskey. On the house, she said with a small smile. He looked at the glass, then at her. Thank you, he said again. I'm Emily, she offered. He hesitated, then replied, James. Nice to meet you, James. You here for the football game? She asked, trying to keep it light. He gave a weak smile, the first she had seen. Not really. Emily sat down across from him. Mark shot her a look from behind the bar, but didn't say anything. You don't look like the type who comes to places like this, she said honestly. James looked around the bar. Neither do you, she laughed. Touch. For the next hour they talked. Not about anything deep, just small things. The weather, the town, the music playing faintly from the jukebox. He didn't say much, but he listened. And when he did speak, his voice was soft but thoughtful. When she asked him what he did for a living, he paused, then answered, I used to be a lawyer. Used to. He nodded. Not anymore. She didn't push, but her heart sank a little. After that night, it became a routine. Every Thursday, James would come in, and every Thursday, Emily would sit with him during her break. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they just sat in silence. But the silence wasn't uncomfortable, it was honest. One night, after about a month, she finally asked, Why do you come here? James stared at his drink. It's quiet. No one expects anything from me here, but you could go anywhere. There are nicer places. He shook his head. I don't want nicer. I want real. She didn't fully understand, but she nodded anyway. Then one Thursday, he didn't come. Emily waited. Every time the door opened, she looked up, hoping. It was him. But it wasn't. Not that night. Not the next Thursday either. She told herself not to worry. Maybe he was busy. Maybe he was out of town. But in her gut, something felt off. 2 more weeks passed. Then, on the 5th Thursday, he returned. He looked worse than before. Thinner, pale, like he hadn't eaten or slept in days. "James," she whispered when she saw him. He sat in his usual booth, but this time, when she brought him a drink, he didn't thank her. He looked up, eyes glassy. "I buried my son last week." The words hit her like a brick to the chest. I'm so sorry," she whispered, sitting down. He didn't cry. He didn't shake. He just stared at the table like it was the only thing keeping him from falling apart. He was 15, James said. "Car accident. I was supposed to pick him up that night, but I was late." He walked instead. A drunk driver hit him. Emily felt her eyes fill with tears. She reached across the table and touched his hand gently. "It's not your fault," she said. He looked at her, his face broken. "Isn't it?" She didn't know what to say. That night, they didn't talk much. But when she walked him out to his car, he said, "Thank you for sitting with me. You don't know what that means." "Anytime," she said softly, and she meant it. Over the next few weeks, James started opening up more. Little by little, he shared his story. How he had been a successful lawyer in Boston. How his marriage had fallen apart after his son's death. How he couldn't go back to that life. How the guilt was eating him alive. Emily listened, not because she had the answers, but because she knew sometimes people just needed someone to hear their pain. One night, he asked her, "Do you think people like me deserve to move on?" She looked at him for a long time. "I think people like you deserve a second chance," she said. "Because the world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more real ones." He smiled. A real one this time. The kind that reached his eyes. That night, for the first time since she had met him, James laughed. And in that small laugh, in that dimly lit bar, something began to change. Maybe healing didn't happen all at once. Maybe it happened beyond the bar. Emily had always believed that people walked around with invisible weights on their shoulders. Some people carried sadness, others carried guilt. But James carried a whole storm. Ever since he told her about his son, their conversations changed. They were deeper now. He wasn't just a sad man in a bar anymore. He was a father, a man who had lost more than most could bear. Every Thursday night, like clockwork, James would come in. And every Thursday night, Emily would be there to meet him, her heart open and ready to listen. One night, while wiping glasses at the bar, Emily noticed James standing outside before coming in. He stood by his car, staring up at the sky. The rain had stopped, and the stars peeked through the clouds like shy children. She stepped outside quietly. "It's cold out here," she said. He didn't turn. "I used to stargaze with my son. He loved the stars. Said they were his secret friends." Emily stood beside him, not saying anything. She looked up, letting the quiet fill the space between them. James finally spoke again. "Some nights, when I can't sleep, I wonder if he's up there somewhere, watching, maybe even forgiving me." Emily's voice was soft. "I think he would." James gave a bitter laugh. "You don't even know him." "No," she agreed, "but I know you. And if he was anything like you, then he had a good heart." He turned to her slowly. "You really think so?" She nodded. "Yes. And I think he would want you to keep going." James didn't answer. But that night, he stayed longer than usual. They sat together until the chairs were on tables and the last customer had gone home. As weeks passed, James started changing. It was small at first. He ordered food instead of just a drink. He shaved his beard. He smiled more. And one Thursday, he came in with a new book tucked under his arm. Emily raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "A journal," he said. "You told me once that writing helps. Figured I'd give it a try." She grinned. "Look at you, becoming all wise and emotional." He laughed. "Don't get used to it." But deep down, Emily was proud of him. Every now and then, he'd read her something he wrote. They were short entries, memories, thoughts, questions. sometimes even poems. One night, he read her this: "Grief is a room with no windows, but sometimes a stranger walks in and turns on a lamp." She blinked back tears. "That's beautiful." He closed the book. "It's about you." Her heart caught in her throat. "James, I mean it," he said quietly. "You've been the only light I've had for a long time." Emily wasn't sure what to say. She wasn't used to people seeing her that way. She had grown up in a quiet home with quiet pain. Her father left when she was little. Her mother worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. Emily learned early that being strong meant pretending you didn't need anyone, but James saw through her, just like she saw through him. One night, he asked, "Do you believe people can ever be whole again?" She thought for a moment. "No, I think life breaks everyone. But maybe we don't have to stay broken. Is that what you believe?" He asked. "I have to," she replied. "Otherwise, what's the point?" That night, he didn't just say goodbye when he left. He hugged her. It was soft, unsure, but it was real. And for the first time in months, Emily felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. But healing isn't a straight road. A few weeks later, James didn't show up again. At first, Emily tried not to worry, but after 3 weeks with no sign of him, she started to panic. She tried calling the number he had used once when he helped her carry boxes to her car. It went straight to voicemail. She even drove by the address he scribbled on a napkin one night when they joked about being pen pals. The building looked empty. It felt like losing someone all over again. Then one night, almost 2 months later, James came back, but something was different. His hair was messy. His eyes were red, and he walked with a limp. Emily ran to him. "James, what happened?" He looked at her, pain written across every part of him. "I relapsed." Her heart dropped. "What do you mean?" "I started drinking again. Heavy. I was doing okay. Then I visited my ex-wife. I thought I was ready. I wasn't. I saw pictures of my son. His room was still the same. I broke down. I got drunk, crashed my car." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Are you okay?" "I'm alive. Barely. I spent a few days in the hospital. Then I checked myself into rehab." Emily covered her mouth, trying not to cry. "You should have told me." He nodded slowly. "I wanted to, but I was ashamed." "James, you don't have to hide from me. I know. That's why I'm here." They sat in silence for a while. The bar buzzed softly behind them, but in that moment, it felt like the world had stopped. "I'm trying, Em," he whispered. "I'm really trying." "I know," she said, reaching for his hand. "And I'll be here every Thursday, just like always." He looked down at their hands. "Do you think there's still a life for me after everything?" She smiled gently. "Not the same life, but maybe a better one." James came back every week after that. Some days were good, some were not, but he kept coming, and Emily kept being there. One night, she showed him a photo from her childhood. "That's me," she said, pointing to a small girl in overalls, holding a teddy bear. "You were adorable." He smiled. She chuckled. "That bear was my best friend. I called him Mr. Brave." "Why Mr. Brave?" "Because when I was scared at night, I'd hold him tight and pretend he could chase away the monsters." James looked at her softly. "Did it work?" "Sometimes," she said, "but most of the time, I just ended up crying myself to sleep." He reached out and gently brushed the hair from her face. "You're still brave. Braver than you know." She didn't pull away. Something was changing between them, something that felt bigger than just grief. One Thursday night, after everyone had left, James stayed back. He looked nervous. "There's something I want to ask you," he said. Emily's heart raced. "Okay." He took a deep breath. "Would you have dinner with me?" "Not here. Somewhere nice. Just us." She stared at him, stunned. "You want to date?" "I don't know what to call it," he admitted. "I just know that you've been the reason I get through the week, and I think I'm ready to feel something again." "If you are too." Emily didn't answer right away. She thought about the broken pieces in both of them, the wounds, the fears, but she also thought about the laughs, the late night talks, The way her heart beat a little faster when he looked at her. "Okay," she whispered. James smiled. It was a smile full of gratitude, fear, and something new, hope, and for the first time in years, both of them felt like maybe, just maybe, the past didn't have to be the end of their story. Sometimes healing starts in the most unexpected places, sometimes it starts beyond the bar. Emily stood in front of the mirror for the 10th time that night. Her hands were shaking. It wasn't just any dinner. It was her first real date in almost 4 years. The last one had ended in silence, followed by months of loneliness. She had told herself she didn't need love again. She had told herself that some people were just meant to be alone, but James had changed that. There was something about the way he listened, the way he never rushed her words, the way he looked at her like she mattered, even when she didn't feel like she did. She wore a dark green dress, nothing fancy. Her hair was tied back loosely. She didn't want to look perfect. She just wanted to look like herself. At exactly 7 p.m., a soft knock came at the door. Her heart jumped. She opened it slowly, and there he was. James stood there in a clean shirt and jeans, holding a single daisy. "I didn't know what kind of flowers you liked," he said, smiling nervously. But daisies seemed honest. Emily laughed softly, her nerves melting. "It's perfect." They drove to a quiet Italian restaurant on the edge of town. Candles flickered on the tables, and soft music floated in the air. The smell of garlic and warm bread filled the room. James held the door for her. He hadn't done anything like this in years, but it felt natural with her. They sat near the window, where the city lights glowed gently in the distance. "So," Emily said, unfolding her napkin, "we're doing this." James chuckled. "We really are." For the first few minutes, they just talked about simple things: work, food, music. But then the silence came, the kind of silence that comes when both people realize they're no longer just friends. James cleared his throat. "I haven't dated anyone since the divorce." Emily nodded. "I haven't since I stopped trusting." He looked up. "Someone hurt you?" She hesitated, then nodded. "A long time ago." He left without saying goodbye. "Took my heart with him." James leaned forward. "And you never talked about it?" "I didn't want to carry it anymore," she said softly. "But I guess pain stays, even when you don't speak it." He reached across the table and gently touched her hand. "I won't leave without goodbye," he said. Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away. The dinner went on, light and full of laughter. It wasn't perfect. The waiter got their order wrong. James knocked over his glass of water. Emily dropped her fork, but it was real, and they both liked that more than perfect. After dinner, they walked through a nearby park. The air was cool, and the night was quiet. Crickets sang in the distance, and the moon lit the path ahead. James stopped and looked up. "You ever think about how small we are under the stars?" he asked. "All the time," Emily replied. "But sometimes that makes me feel safe. Like, maybe my problems aren't as big as I think they are." He smiled. "I like that." They sat on a bench, side by side, their shoulders touching. "I've been thinking," James said after a while. "About going back to law?" she asked. He shook his head. "Back to life, starting fresh. Somewhere new." Emily's chest tightened. "Somewhere far?" He noticed her voice change. "No, not unless you're far." She looked at him, her heart pounding. "I want to build something again," he said. "But not alone." She reached out and held his hand. "I want that too," she whispered. The night ended with a soft hug. Not a long one, not too tight, but one that said everything words couldn't. The next few weeks felt like a dream. They met for coffee, walked through bookstores, cooked dinner together, talked late into the night. James even showed her pictures of his son. "This was when we went camping," he said one day, holding a photo of a smiling boy with messy hair and bright eyes. "He looks just like you," Emily said. James smiled softly. "He was braver than I ever was." Emily held the photo gently. "He would be proud of you." Some nights were harder. Sometimes James would wake up shaking from nightmares. Sometimes he'd go quiet and stare at the wall for an hour. One night, he admitted, "Sometimes I still want to disappear. Not because I don't care, but because the pain sneaks up without warning." Emily sat beside him, wrapping her arms around him. "Then let's face it together." He broke down in her arms that night, and she didn't try to fix it. She just stayed, and for James, that was enough. But darkness has a way of testing light. One Thursday, James didn't show up at the bar. Emily waited, heart tight in her chest. She checked her phone. No messages, no calls. By midnight, she drove to his apartment. His car was there. Lights off, door locked. She knocked. No answer. She used the spare key he gave her once, just in case. Inside, she found him on the floor of the living room, barely conscious, an empty bottle beside him. Her heart shattered. "James," she cried, rushing to him. He groaned softly, his eyes glassy. "I'm sorry. I was just tired." She called 911, held his hand the whole way to the hospital. He survived. Barely. It was an overdose. Sleeping pills, alcohol, a mix he had used before, back when he didn't care if he woke up. When he opened his eyes 2 days later, Emily was still there, tired, pale, but there. "I thought I lost you," she whispered. Tears ran down his cheeks. "I didn't want to hurt you. I just didn't know how to keep going." She held his face in her hands. "Then let me help you. Let's do this together. No more hiding." He nodded, sobbing like a child. "I don't want to die," he whispered. "Not anymore." That moment became a turning point. James checked himself into a better rehab center. Emily visited him every weekend. They wrote letters. He wrote, "I thought I was a broken bottle at the bottom of the ocean, but you reached in and pulled me up. Thank you for not giving up." She wrote back, "You're not broken. You are becoming, and I'm proud of every step." When he came out 3 months later, he was thinner, but stronger, his eyes clearer, his voice steadier. They didn't jump back into romance. They started again, as friends, as fighters, and slowly, as more. James got a job working at a small law office helping people with housing issues. It wasn't glamorous, but it made him feel useful again. Emily kept working at the bar, but now she smiled more. Her world had opened. One Thursday, he came to the bar after her shift. He brought 2 cups of hot chocolate and a folded paper. "What's this?" she asked. "Something I wrote. About you." She unfolded it and read, "She didn't rescue me. She reminded me I was worth rescuing." And sometimes, love is not about fixing someone. It's about sitting in the dark with them until they find their own light. Emily looked up, eyes filled with tears. He stepped closer. "I love you," he said simply. And this time, she didn't hold back. "I love you too." They kissed in the empty bar, quiet and soft. Not like in the movies, but real, and maybe that was even better. The months that followed were the kind James never thought he would live to see. He and Emily moved slowly, gently. They didn't rush anything. They still met on Thursdays, still shared quiet dinners and long walks. But now there was something more, a closeness that felt sacred, like a shelter in the middle of a storm. James smiled more, laughed more. He even started running in the mornings, something he hadn't done since college. He called his mother for the first time in 3 years. He apologized to old friends. He gave away most of his old clothes and filled his small apartment with books and plants and warm light. One Saturday morning, as sunlight poured through his kitchen window, James made pancakes while Emily sat on the counter, swaying her legs and sipping coffee. "You know," she said, "these pancakes are better than the ones at the diner down the street." He grinned. "That's because I use cinnamon. It's my secret." She leaned closer. "Well, it's not a secret anymore." They laughed, and for a while, the world felt simple. But healing isn't a straight line. One rainy afternoon, James came home from work to find a letter in the mail. The handwriting on the envelope made his chest tighten. It was from his ex-wife Claire. He sat on the couch, hands trembling as he opened it. Inside was a short note and a photo. The note read, "James, I found this in one of Ethan's notebooks. I thought you might want to have it. I hope you're doing okay, Claire." The photo was a drawing, a rough sketch of a rocket ship flying toward the stars. A small boy inside it had messy hair and a wide smile. Underneath, Ethan had written, "My dad says I can do anything. One day, I'll fly beyond the stars." James stared at it for a long time. Then he broke down, right there on the floor. When Emily came over that night, she found him sitting in the dark, the photo in his hand. "James," she whispered. He didn't speak. He just handed her the drawing. She sat beside him, her heart aching. "I keep thinking," he whispered, "if I had just been on time that night, if I hadn't let him walk home." She grabbed his hand. "You loved him. That's what matters." But love didn't save him. Emily looked at him, her eyes fierce. "No, but it shaped who he was. That little boy believed he could fly because of you." "That means something." He didn't answer, but he didn't pull away either. They sat like that for a long time, letting the silence speak for them. A week later, James did something he never thought he'd be ready for. He visited Ethan's grave. Emily came with him. They brought flowers, blue irises, his favorite color. James knelt beside the grave, his hands shaking. He didn't know what to say. The words felt too big, too heavy, but then he spoke. "Hey, buddy. It's me. I know it's been a while. I don't even know if you can hear me, but I wanted you to know. I'm trying. I miss you every single day. I'd give anything to have you back, but I'm trying to be better, to be the man you saw when you looked at me." Emily stood behind him, tears streaming down her face. "I brought someone with me," James said. "Her name's Emily. You'd like her. She's got the biggest heart. She saved me, kiddo, when I didn't think I was worth saving." He touched the edge of the stone. "I'll come back more. I promise." That night, they didn't talk much, but something had shifted. Grief still lived inside him, but it wasn't in control anymore. Later that week, James received another letter. This one was an invitation. The local law school wanted him to speak at a recovery panel. A professor there had heard about James's story from someone at his office. At first, James wanted to say no. He didn't like crowds. He didn't want pity, but Emily encouraged him. "You have a story that could help someone else. Isn't that what you always say you want to do?" He looked at her. "What if I'm not ready?" She smiled. "Then just be honest. You don't have to be perfect. Just be you." So he agreed. The night of the panel, the small auditorium was packed. Students, professors, community members, some recovering addicts, some just curious. James stood behind the podium, gripping the sides tightly. He looked out at the crowd, took a deep breath, and began. "I used to be a lawyer in Boston. I had a wife, a son, a life that looked perfect on paper. But life doesn't follow paper." He told them everything about the accident, the guilt, the drinking, the nights he didn't want to wake up, the day he met Emily, the bar, the laughter, the relapse, the long climb back. He ended with these words: "Pain doesn't make you weak. Hiding it does. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning how to carry it without letting it crush you. And love, real love, it doesn't save you, but it reminds you why you should save yourself." When he finished, the room was silent. Then someone began to clap, and then another, until the whole room stood in applause. Afterward, a young man approached him, maybe 20 years old, nervous. "My dad died of an overdose last year," the boy said. "I've been angry ever since, but hearing you made me realize maybe he was just lost, like you were. So thank you." James nodded, tears in his eyes. "You're not alone, son." Later that night, he and Emily sat in his car, the stars shining above. "I'm proud of you," she said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "I still get scared," he admitted. "So do I," she whispered. "But we're not running anymore." He turned to her. "I don't want to lose you, Em." "You won't," she said. "Just keep showing up." And he did. He started speaking more, helping others, Writing again, he and Emily took a weekend trip to the mountains. They hiked, watched sunsets, and talked about the future. One night, sitting by the fire, James turned to her. "Do you think we could build something permanent?" She looked at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean a life, a home, maybe even a family." She paused, breath catching. "I think we already have." And as the fire crackled and the stars watched from above, they held hands, knowing the journey wasn't over, but also knowing they weren't walking it alone anymore. 2 years later, O'Malley's looked different. The lights were a little brighter. The jukebox had new songs. There were fresh coats of paint on the walls. The old wobbly tables had been replaced with smooth wooden ones that James had helped sand and stain himself, but the biggest difference wasn't the furniture or the music. It was the laughter, the warmth, the feeling that something beautiful had grown from a place that once held only sadness and silence. Emily stood behind the bar one Thursday evening, smiling as she poured drinks and chatted with regulars. Her hair was longer now, and her eyes sparkled more than they used to. James sat in his usual booth, but this time, he wasn't alone. A small boy with sandy brown hair and wide blue eyes sat across from him, holding a crayon and a kid's menu. "Uncle James, look, I drew a rocket ship." James leaned forward, smiling. Just like Ethan's drawing, the boy's name was Leo, Emily's nephew. Her sister had gone through a messy divorce a year ago, and Emily had stepped in to help. Now Leo spent most weekends with them, and James had quickly become his favorite person. "I think you're gonna fly beyond the stars one day," James said softly, patting Leo's hand. Emily watched them from the bar and felt something swell inside her, something like peace. Later that evening, after Leo had gone home with her sister, Emily walked over to the booth. "You two looked pretty serious," she teased, sliding into the seat. James grinned. "He takes his rocket ships seriously." They both laughed. Then James reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded napkin. She raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" He opened it and placed it in front of her. It was a drawing, a sketch of two stick figures sitting at a table, one with long hair, one in a suit. A tiny heart floated between them. Above it, in neat handwriting, were the words, "Sometimes healing begins in the most unexpected places." Emily blinked back tears. "You drew this?" "I've been working on it," he said. "It's for something I'm putting together." "What is it?" He hesitated. Then he took her hand. "I want to open a center, a small one, for people in recovery. A place where they can come, talk, get support. Not like a clinic, more like a living room, a safe place." Her eyes widened. That's amazing. "I want to call it Beyond the Bar," he said quietly. "Because that's where my story changed." She squeezed his hand. "Ours," he nodded. "Ours." That night, they walked home together under a blanket of stars. The town was quiet, the streets wet from earlier rain, but inside them, something steady and bright had taken root. A month later, James signed the lease on a small building near the edge of town. It used to be a bakery. The windows were dusty, and the floor creaked. But James saw what it could become. Emily helped him paint the walls soft yellow. Mark from O'Malley's donated furniture. People from the community, many of them recovering addicts, came to help. One by one, stories began to pour into that space. A teenage girl who lost her brother to drugs, a father who hadn't spoken to his son in years, a mother who had just left rehab. They came in quiet, scared, unsure, but they left feeling seen, heard, not alone. James led most of the meetings, but sometimes he just listened. Emily would come by with coffee and muffins. She'd sit in the corner, nodding, smiling, letting people know they were welcome. One night, a man stood up during a group session and said, "I almost ended my life last winter. Then I walked into this place. I heard James talk about his son, and it made me stay one more day." That day turned into a week, then a month, and now, "I think I want to live." After the session, James stepped outside to breathe. Emily followed him. "You okay?" she asked. He looked at her, eyes glassy. Sometimes it feels too big. Like, how did I get here? She touched his cheek. Because you didn't give up. You kept choosing life. Every single day. I didn't do it alone, he said. No. She smiled. You didn't. That weekend, they took a trip to a small cabin in the mountains. Just the two of them. A fire. A deck with a view of the trees. No phones. No work. Just quiet. On the second night, James knelt on one knee in front of the fire. He held a small ring in his hand. Simple. Silver. No diamond. I don't need perfect, he said. I just need you. Will you marry me? Emily stared at him, stunned. Then she smiled through her tears. Yes. They married on a spring afternoon in a quiet garden behind the center. Only close friends came. Mark from the bar, Emily's sister, and Leo. Some of the people from the group meetings. Everyone brought flowers instead of wedding vows. James, read a journal entry. I used to live in darkness. Then one day, I walked into a bar, and a stranger handed me a glass of water. She didn't ask what was wrong. She just sat with me, week after week. And without even knowing it, she pulled me back from the edge. Emily, you are the light I didn't know I needed. And I promise, for every Thursday we have left, I'll keep showing up. I'll keep choosing you. Emily read hers too. You were a storm when you walked into my life. And now, you're the calm I wake up to. I don't care about the past. I care about every moment we still have. And I promise to never stop listening. To never stop holding space for your healing. For our healing. They kissed under a soft rain that came without warning. But no one ran for cover. Later that night, they returned to O'Malley's. It was still open. They walked in, hand in hand, and the bartender smiled. You guys look like you just got married, he said. James grinned. We did. They sat at the corner booth, the same place it all began. Emily raised her glass. To Thursdays, she said. He clinked his glass against hers. To be on the bar. The end.